Welcome back, James Bale. We are here to guess what? Talk about triathlon. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Jimbo, how you going, mate?
Yeah, I'm doing all right, mate. I'm doing all right. We're progressing through the week nicely, bouncing off the back of a weekend of really quite exciting triathlon action. For the first time in a long time, I've been looking forward to talking to you. How are
Yeah.
you, mate?
I'm the same. People are probably listening going, I still haven't worked out the introduction to this podcast because I really did reflect on the fact that last week I felt like I said triathlon about 27 times in the first minute of the show. So I was like, how do I do? So God knows what it is. It is whatever it was that I just said. But the same, mate, I am so like literally I said to my wife this morning, I'm like, I'm really looking forward to the podcast. And I'm really
Yeah,
looking
yeah,
forward to
yeah.
discussing the weekend of racing. But yeah, mate,
And
no,
that
good.
says something, doesn't it? Doesn't that say something about the sport at the moment? Because we haven't had that level of engagement in mind, for me anyway, as an audience member, as someone who's a fan of the sport. I haven't felt as engaged by the racing. And finally, I've had a weekend where I've really felt drawn into it and excited by it.
Well,
And that has left me thinking, I'm up for this. I'm up for the podcast
yeah,
finally.
I mean, our listeners probably don't realize, but like, I fucking hate recording a podcast with you. It's like the real low point of my week. The burden, I mean, the commitment to content that I have a conversation with this miserable Brit for an hour every week. But like, no, seriously, I, spoiler alert, I fucking loved the racing on like both races. I found fantastic, and I think I've been saying that I wasn't that hyped on, and I started to get a bit excited. Maybe that's why. Maybe I lowered my expectations or something. But I loved it, mate. I really,
Mm.
really loved the race. And right, the ramification. I think there's so many storylines that come as a result of this. There's so much to unpack. But before we get into that, if you enjoy this podcast, you want to support us doing the podcast, head to patreon.com/talking triathlon, where you will get a bonus monthly show. We recorded our first bonus monthly show last week, and we had a whole bunch of new patrons join up. So thank you to everybody who has joined. But the feedback was really positive. People seem to like it. I do swear quite badly in that podcast. I have to admit, I dropped
I've
the.
had some messages about it as well, and people enjoyed it. People
Oh,
enjoyed
good.
it.
Okay.
It's
If you don't like
yeah.
the word that rhymes
In
with runt,
fact,
maybe you
in
don't listen
fact,
to it.
I had a message specifically about the runt, saying how much they enjoyed that.
I did enjoy that podcast, and I think so. What we called it, remember when the PTO launched, and we talk a lot about the PTO and what has maybe gone wrong or the future, based very much, I think, off the conversation with Dave McNamee. And I enjoyed it. So if you guys are interested in that, it was a good chat. But yeah, patreon.com/talking triathlon is where you can go to support it. But look, let's get straight into the PTO US Open. I have many thoughts, and I don't necessarily
Oh,
know where to start, but I think we should probably start with the women's race because
yeah. Okay, let's start with the women's race. What a race!
what a race, mate.
I mean,
Taylor Knibb
both of
is,
these races are going to get that reaction out of me, both the men's and the women's. But I thoroughly enjoyed this. Taylor Knibb is fantastic, isn't she?
it's funny too, because when I was watching the race and she got off the bike with what, like 2 minutes or whatever, I was like, she's lost it. She
Yeah,
fucked this one up.
same,
Like
same.
what a mistake. The fact she hasn't been able to get away from Ashleigh Gentle.
And the
What a
commentators thought
performance.
that as well. They were as she was
Wow.
coming off the bike, and Ash was coming off the bike, and she was getting into the run. They were saying that she's probably going to catch her on about lap 4 or 5. That's kind of where the catch is going to happen. That catch never came. My predictions for this race were Ashleigh Gentle in first, Taylor Knibb in second, and Paula Finley in third. So I almost nailed it. And I think Ash just didn't quite have that day. That catch didn't happen. But Taylor Knibb put out the run that she needed to put out.
Just because I know that I know we're going to go through what actually happened, but we're on it. We've now seen two races where Ash has come second, and last year Ash dominated with this stellar run. Do you think it is like, and we'll get into the splits and stuff later, but do you think it is that the other athletes have lifted, or is Ash a bit off, or is it just a change in? I mean, I think that Dallas race last year, we know that Taylor Knibb she wasn't running much in the lead up, and it was hot and stuff like that. But yeah, we've seen two races now where Ash hasn't won. What do you think is probably the reason for that?
I mean, she's still running an incredibly fast run split.
Mm,
She's running a 105.08 off the bike,
yep.
which is quick.
Yep.
Taylor just ran a 107.07,
Yes.
and that allowed allowed the catch not to happen. I don't think Ash is off. I think that an
Others are
athlete like
better.
Taylor Knibb, has just brought enough now. Like you say, when she was coming off the bike with the gap that she had, you were thinking, well, because you kind of put all your emphasis on her bike, don't you? You think if she hasn't smashed it on the bike and built up an incredible buffer, then maybe she's not going to win this. But she just lifted her run game. Whether she's taken a bit of emphasis off the bike to lift that run game slightly, she's
Yeah.
still not running as fast as Ash did, but she did enough on that day.
To me, Taylor Knibb is a complete athlete, and I really
And it
think
was hot, and she's American.
it wasn't that hot, mate. I heard people talk. Come on, it was like not even
I think
30
it was.
degrees.
I think it was the humidity and the clamminess of it more
Yeah, of
than
course,
anything.
but I mean, there's hotter races. I don't think it's that big a thing. But Taylor Knibb is like honestly a complete athlete. Like
Yeah,
we
agreed.
talked about Magnus's race in Roth. We see like Kristian, Jan. To me, she is just one of those, doesn't have a weakness. Really good swimmer, really good biker, really good runner. And I think sometimes, we've seen her have a history of injuries recently, maybe, which has probably impacted her running a little bit. Of course, it's the sport that you need to keep at the most. But yeah, she is the female version of Kristian Blummenfelt in the sense that she's so versatile. And what I love about Taylor Knibb is what she represents, is because we've seen the men's side of the racing do a lot of switching up between the distances, going between shorter, longer. I mean, the Norwegians are an extreme inversion, but I love that Taylor Knibb is doing it too. Like I want to see more of it. I want to see more of these female triathletes mix up the distances, because there's so many of those short course athletes that I really would love to see do this PTO distance. I think that Taylor Knibb's success at both distances will show more women that we can do this, and that gets me excited.
Indeed, but she has really got the bike pedigree, isn't she, to carry her through a race like this? Because this sort of distance is a lot of those short court athletes could punch out this sort of run distance, this sort of swim distance with speed quite easily. But being able to dial in a time trial bike over this distance and put out a performance that's worthy of a race like this, she's really got that. She's got
Definitely.
that background. She's got that in her. I was pleased to see Paula Finley on the podium.
Yep. Same.
She had a day. She
Great
had a
athlete.
day. And yeah, really, really good. It's just those top two were in a different zone to everyone else, weren't they? The race was between number 1 and 2, and the rest were fighting for that final step on the podium.
If you look at 4 to 7, like that actually turned out to be an incredible race, right? Where you had 4th to 7th, which was separated by seconds. And this brings me to something that I think Lucy Byram was 100% the standout performance of the day for me. And I'm not saying that Taylor Knibb was incredible, but Taylor Knibb performed at a level that I expect Taylor Knibb to perform. Taylor Knibb is an incredible athlete, one of the best in the 70.3 world champion. Didn't surprise me that she won the race. Whereas Lucy Byram's an athlete, we've sort of been that even earlier in the year when MX, we would sort of talk about her performance. She's coming through, getting a bit of momentum, and then she does this. And Christ Almighty, if you're not paying attention to her, considering she rode like 15 seconds slower than Taylor Knibb or something.
Yeah, I think she was only 17 seconds slower than Taylor Knibb on the bike.
I think her attack is probably the reason why things broke up or didn't go the way others maybe wanted, is because Paula was the only one who could go with her. If Lucy Byram hadn't have come through that group, the gap probably still wouldn't have, maybe it would have, I don't know, stayed similar, a bit different, but Ash and everybody else couldn't keep up, which meant the gap that Ash had to then try to make up to the lead became bigger. So I really feel like the decisive move of that race was Lucy Byram coming through, and she was exceptional, mate. For 4th place, it's just like that bike power. Yeah, I think a lot of people are going to be paying attention to her for the rest of the year and the years to come. It was exceptional to see. And just the finish line shot, again, I'll talk about the broadcast later. I wish we saw more of it, but running for her life when you got Holly Lawrence being chased by Ellie Salthouse, being chased by Kat Matthews. Phenomenal. Like
it was cool, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was so cool.
Watching them race in. I wish we'd seen, like you say, I wish we'd caught that race a little bit further before the finish line and really seen it develop a little bit more, because having 4 athletes hunt each other down as we go towards that finish line, especially being when 2 of them are Holly Lawrence and Ellie Salthouse, which seem to be sort of forged together, don't they? Those 2 athletes at the moment.
It's great to see, isn't it? It's great to see.
Yeah. It really is. And to see Ellie in 6th place, like
Fantastic.
she said on her Instagram, it was her biggest performance on best
Yeah.
performance on a world stage. And she deserves it. It was great to see her
Yeah,
up
she's a
there.
fantastic athlete.
But, it's the same. It has to be said for Holly. To see Holly back in fighting for those top spots is awesome as well.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah. I think, yeah, I don't even know what I was going to say. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I just, like I said, I think that I wish we saw more of that sort of action unfold a little bit further back, because I mean, I've said this point before, but it feels like you only really do see the top 3 or 4 athletes in the race, and the rest are sort of like, again, I just feel I don't understand. I don't understand why. I don't understand what it is that makes it so difficult to broadcast everybody. And I mean, we'll talk about it in the men's race. I think there's so many points from the men's race that I really wish we got to see and we just didn't. But I don't want to move on to the broadcast yet. Maybe we should talk a little bit general. I mean, no, before that, India Lee, I think, was great. I know that she sort of struggled on the run, but the way she sort of, at least the bike and everything, was great to see. Any other? Tamara Jewett, I was surprised by. That's probably a performance that I was a bit disappointed by, to be honest, because I thought that her swim and bike had improved a lot. But the fact that she got off the bike like over 10 minutes down or something, you can run as fast as the clappers. You ain't going to catch a 10-minute gap on an 18K run.
No,
that was
no.
disappointing to me, because I see such a bright future for Tamara Jewett. So that felt like a weird misfire. And again, not trying to be negative, but I do feel like, looking at the women's race, and Dave sort of touched on this a bit, I can't help but look at how many people weren't there. Like, I really feel like, more so in the women's race than the men's race, but there's no Ash Gentle, no Annie Haug, no Danielle Reef, no Emma Pallant-Brown, no Lucy Charles, no Laura Phillip. There's so many female athletes that I wish we saw on that start list that really, to me, would have elevated the race. And I don't understand why, to be honest. I
Indeed,
struggle.
because all of those names you just mentioned, you pretty much would expect to slot them into the top 10 somewhere.
Yeah.
And that changes this dynamic quite dramatically. Not that these athletes on this start list here wouldn't have beaten them or couldn't have beaten them, but the expectation going in is that those names you just named are going to be in that top 10. So
Yeah.
how else could things have shaken out? What would have been different on the day?
I also had the conversation with somebody, and they said, "Oh, but Danny's more of an Ironman athlete." And I said, "She beat Ash Gentle in 70.3 this year." Like, it
very
really,
recently.
very recently. And we saw that Roth performance. Like, I think you slotted in a Daniela Reef with her bike power. It could have definitely
Suddenly you've
changed
got someone who's going toe for toe with Taylor.
Yeah.
Over that bike distance and coming off the bike with her and changing that dynamic completely. So yeah, you're quite right. I wish there was more of a push to get the big names at these races. We had some big names here, but it would be, like we've said over and over again, to have a tour like this that you're trying to launch, that is going to be the sort of the anchor point of a long course triathlon broadcast series. You want to have your big names there, don't you?
No, I'm gonna flip that a little bit, because to say that we need more of a push, I actually don't agree, because I feel like the PTO have done everything they can actually to make this extremely easy for the athletes to. I think this is on the athletes, to be honest, a bit, mate. Like, it's like, come on, guys, just fucking stop it. Like, I really do feel like at some point the athletes need to take a little bit of responsibility, right? Like, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. We really have the opportunity to have these great races, and it is just this, whatever it is. I don't know. I still don't really understand what it is, but yeah, there's that's the one. And again, I don't want to focus on negativity, because I think there's so many positives from this weekend, but I do feel like it just needed to be addressed. That, yeah, what's it actually going to take to just get the best people at it? Like, big prize. I mean, look, to be honest, the prize money, when you actually look at the prize money, it does drop off pretty dramatically out of the top 5. But I still think that the broadcast was so good. There were so many eyeballs on it. People seem to be really talking about this race. Like, it's, we'll talk about the European champs. I don't think many people were talking about the European champs the way that we've been talking
No, they
about
really
the PTO
weren't.
race. So
The broadcast here was very good, I thought. It's kind of no,
I'm not sure.
I know you're going to disagree with me slightly, but I think it was good enough to not detract from the racing for me.
We shouldn't be settling into the good enough argument there.
Stop. You know what? I'm not going down that road. What I mean is, it was for me as a viewer and a fan. It didn't. I wasn't saying, "Oh, well, this is good enough. I'll just accept this." It was truly good enough in the I want to watch a sporting event realm capacity for me to go, oh, this is all right. It's not detracting from it. You know, it
Yeah.
wasn't just, oh, it's good enough to have it on Facebook Live and I can just stare at
Yeah.
Jan Frodeno for it felt like a proper sports broadcast, which I think I messaged you at the time, is kind of where they should have
Yeah.
started
You did say this. I
back
think
at the Collins Cup.
this is the best venue they've had a race at. I really feel like this was an exceptional venue. I mean, I wasn't there. I
Yeah.
don't know. It could be a shithole when you're there. But watching it on the TV, for me, it ticked a lot of the boxes. I felt like the swim course was very easy to understand. I know that it was probably shit for the athletes, but I loved that the Aussie exit was so long because you really saw, like, it added another element of drama, right? Where there's sort of, people running and there was
And it
chicanes and
didn't
stuff.
feel empty, did it, at any point? At no point did you get that tracking shot where you pulled back and it was like a fucking car park with
Correct.
barriers in it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You felt like it was a contained, clean, tight environment where the racing was taking
And you
place.
could,
You did never feel like you were standing in an industrial estate and there's a race happening here in a big fucking open
correct.
space.
Yeah. And you could tell, I think you could tell where it was very quick, or at least for me, I was very quickly able to understand where on the course they were. There was enough unique spots on the course that watching it, I
Yeah.
could tell, like on the bike, okay, that you can see transition, the flat, the slight hill, the top with the turn with the dog leg. They come out of the dog leg, the downhill. On the run, they had the part along the water. They had the park with the path. Then you come around it. You could very easily tell where the athletes were, so that even if you couldn't see the athletes on the same shot, you knew that there was the aid station on the corner, and you could tell, well, hang on, I just saw Taylor at this aid station at Ashleigh. So you could very quickly in your head sort of work out the gaps without, because like that's what I liked
And there were
about it.
enough places where they could draw back
Yeah.
and you could see those two athletes or however you were tracking at the time in the same shot, but it wasn't ruined by the background.
Yeah.
You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
exactly.
It wasn't like,
I
you know,
really
we're
like
not
this
going to pull
venue.
back because this place
Yeah.
is fucking horrible.
It's a car park. It's it's like no, I really feel like, again, we were sort of joking, and I know that you got some messages about we didn't know where Milwaukee is, but
Yeah.
I think I really, really appreciated the venue. I really did. I
Yeah.
thought, I mean, would I have liked to see the course be a bit more challenging? Yeah. I'd like to see a big hill in it or something, but I still feel like, to me, this is the best event the PTO's put on to date. I feel I really did
Yeah.
enjoy it. And I feel like a
Agreed.
big part
Being
of
that
that was that.
we're talking about the women's race and talking about the broadcast, one thing I do want to say about the
Yeah.
commentary is what's his name? Jack?
Yep.
Yeah. What's his surname?
Jack Kelly.
Jack Kelly. The women in the professional field are not girls. So for God's sake, stop calling them girls. That would be my one point about the commentary.
I think that we should probably talk about the commentary. And I feel like, I think they did very, very good job. And I think that,
I do agree as well.
I think Jack brought a real element of, I mean, he's a frother like we are a bit. Like he had a level of knowledge about the sport that I think that has been missing in commentary a lot. And I feel like you can't take a person out of from podcasts and doing this sort of thing and pop him into commentary and expect him to nail it first time. I definitely think that he has room for improvement, but I like the intention. I like having somebody there. I mean, a person that I'd love to see them get into commentary is Mark Matthews. I think that Mark Matthews is extremely, like, he's the sort of person that I'd like to see them add into commentary too. I mean, I listened to that interview he did with Joe Skipper a couple of weeks ago, and I thought it was phenomenal. But I did appreciate having that element of knowledge. I think that maybe he spent a bit too much time predicting what was happening. Rather, and you made this point to me.
I messaged you.
Yeah, and
I
I think you hit the nail on the head. Is you should talk about what's happening rather than necessarily always about what's going to happen. But
yeah, I mean, you can talk about what could happen. I just found that his style of predicting with certainty what was going to happen allowed the race later to undermine what he'd said.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean? And make it look like, well, you said this was going to happen, and that's not what's happened. You said this is going to happen, that's not what's happened. As opposed to saying, well, we're in a position now where this is happening, and off the back of this could take place, or this could happen, or that athlete could do that, as opposed to this is what's going to happen next. Oh, I was wrong again.
Yeah, Rinny, I thought was really great. I really like Rinny in commentary.
Yeah, she's amazing.
Yeah, like I said, I feel like this is the best version of the PTO thing we've seen. I still think the broad,
totally, without question.
Something simple, riders, and I think the Obsessed Triathlete website again. If you guys like triathlon even a little bit compared to us, go check out the Obsessed Triathlete. But the best thing they have, and I don't know if it's all races or just the PTO events, but they have this live tracker that it really breaks down what's happening with the race, where it's got the gaps, who's gaining time, who's not, who's got the fast. And I just feel like literally just copy that and put that on the screen at all times. Like it's just the one thing, because I found the graphics that they were using a lot of the time, it'd have people in order, yeah, but it didn't contextualize the race enough for me. Or like they kept showing heart rate and stuff. And again, I don't particularly buy into the heart rate stuff, but then occasionally they'd show watts per kilo. And I was like, show that. I want to see, I would rather see the watts per kilo, but I feel like they still need to work out a way to through the graphics, tell the story of the race. If we're not going to see the athletes behind, we need to work it out without having to go to a second screen. Like there needs to be a way to show the gaps and who's gained. Because again, I didn't realize that Kat Matthews was running through the field the way she was, and I didn't realize that it was so close for fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh until that point. And I feel like that is a definitely an area for improvement. I do feel like they need to get better at showing the whole race, basically, because as I've said, I don't understand why they pay 30 athletes to be there if they're only going to show 4 or 5. Like legitimately, if you take out the bottom 15 athletes from this event, I don't think it really would have impacted the race significantly. So why are they doing it? Like, and this isn't me criticizing the athletes. It's like, show the broadcast then if they're there, and because the PTO is also meant to be this, whatever it is, highlight the athletes a bit rather than just show the first couple all the time. I think I feel like that's just the missing piece. But let's keep going. More about the women's race, or
No, I agree with you. I agree with you entirely. I think it's a hard thing to tame, isn't it? A long course triathlon. It's a hard thing to tame into a broadcast, but they are getting there, and every time they do it, they're refining it a little bit more. There has to be some on-screen graphic way, like you say, of creating that overall picture. You know, I would be looking to Formula One or something like that. I know that they've got a lot more money. They got a lot more money to throw at these things, but looking at the way they do things and the way their graphics are presented, the way their cutaways work, I'd be looking to a sport like that, because in a sport like that, you've got the front of the race where all the key decision makers are happening, but then you've got little mini races happening down the field, which you want to keep track of, and you want to keep the audience aware of and what's happening behind. And I'd be looking to a sport like that.
I know we're going to switch to the men's race in a moment, but the perfect example of this is Luke McKenzie put up a photo, and I think the PTO put up a photo as well, actually. And it shows this group of athletes, which is like Bradley Weiss, Dave McNamee, again, going to shout out Dave's run later, Lionel Sanders. Who else was there? There's this group of like seven athletes running shoulder to shoulder. And fuck me, I wish we saw that on the broadcast, because you never really see in long course racing. You really rarely see these groups of athletes running together, and I wish we saw it, especially considering that Dave ended up running the way that he did and everything. But yeah, I agree. I think that there is still room for improvement. But like I'm saying, I understand that there's the money and stuff for the graphics from F1, but it's on a website already. Like there has to be a way where you can just like share screen, like just literally put that graphic in the screen. I don't know, but I feel like the women's race was fantastic. I really enjoyed it. It did things that I didn't expect. Again,
I've watched it twice, and it's a very long time since I've watched the triathlon.
Really?
Twice.
That's interesting. I didn't. Okay, good on you. I watched the whole thing. I watched the whole women's race live. I had to miss. I went out for breakfast, and okay, so the men's race, I went out for breakfast as they were starting to run, and I was that prick sitting at breakfast with my phone resting on the cup so I could see without the audio on. And then I got home, and then I hopped on the train and I actually watched the run part again. So I did sort of watch the men's race 1.5 times. But yeah, let's talk about the men's race, because fuck me, this was fantastic.
Yeah, it was, wasn't it? It was. I remember I messaged you about an hour before the start and said, you know what I'd really like is just a Frodo to put on a masterclass and give everyone a free lesson.
And he did.
And
he did.
And he fucking did, didn't he?
He fucking did.
He fucking did. Because it was just the dynamic of the race didn't lead you to believe that was going to happen at any point. It did look, when he came out of the water, like he was fading on the bike slightly.
Yep.
Up until the point where Magnus tried to get away from him and he went with Magnus. That was when my brain went, because there was that point where he was trailing behind Magnus, and Magnus had gone, and you were thinking, right, Magnus is going to settle in for a second, and then Magnus is going to go and Frodo's going to fall back to whatever the next group behind him is. But the point for me where I knew that something was afoot was when Magnus tried to go and Frodo went with him, and they sort of joined back up to that front group together. that was when I was like, hang on a second, we got ourselves a fucking game
It
here.
it's so funny. And again, talking about the commentary, there was a comment made quite early on when that group of, I think it was Jan, Kristian, Matt, what was, I should remember. He came fourth, and I'm very, very naughty right now for not remembering.
Matthias
Matthias
Magier.
Magier. Thank you. I was getting him and somebody else mixed up. And there was a comment made, oh, there's not much bike power in this front group. And I literally did a double take. I was like, what the fuck? Uh, who who rode with, we're talking about Jan fucking Frodeno, one of the best bikers in the sport, and Kristian Blummenfelt, both of these guys who have ridden with or better than Magnus at events. It's like, don't count them out. Like I couldn't believe that. And yeah, I feel like that pre-race interview that they did with Kristian Jan in Ibiza, they replicated in Milwaukee last week. And you could hear, it was very funny to hear Jan taking shots at Kristian a lot more than he did in Ibiza. And I'm sort of guessing that Jan knew that he wasn't in winning shape in Ibiza. It was a let's get back in. Whereas I feel like he was thinking that he's pretty red hot for this Milwaukee race. And I actually heard in an interview post race, he was given that he said he took inspiration from Macca, from Chris McCormack, where he was intentionally trying to get into Kristian's head a little bit, because he's thinking, if I keep talking about how Kristian has to be at the front because he keeps talking about how he's going to smash us, it's going to force Kristian to the front to do stuff that he doesn't necessarily want to do. And I thought, fucking hell, I love that. And I think that's really what we sort of saw, right? Is we saw a very confident Jan Frodeno calling out Kristian in the lead up. And this felt a lot more like the head-to-head showdown that we wanted to see in Ibiza, we talked about. It felt like it. It actually felt like we were seeing two of the best in the world at their best, ready to have a crack. And
exactly. And then what you say about the mind games, because I've seen comments online where people are saying, well, if Kristian hadn't cramped, he'd have run. But like you say, he pushed himself to the front in that time trial position. He pushed harder than he should have done, leading to the cramps, which is what affected his race.
Correct.
And I love the way that Frodeno races. I really do. I love the fact that he's always got he's got a great swim, a strong bike. But then when you can tell when he's feeling confident, when he comes off that bike, he goes to the front on the run. He doesn't go to the front. He does look good, and he goes to the front and he takes control of the race, and he just ran away from everybody. And oh man, I was getting excited. I was getting excited. Man. I was messaging you going, don't go to the fucking breakfast. Stay here and watch this.
Talking about the online comments, because after the race, there was a comment that Jan made where I got really annoyed when Kristian punched me at the first buoy. And I thought, okay, you can, what did he say? I'll pass the torch, but the throne stays with me.
Yeah, and we can have the changing of the guard, but the throne stays with me.
And fuck me, I saw a post today, and there's so many being like, what do you have to be prick about? And I put up a comment and I said, the same people who are saying God triathlon is boring have very quickly transitioned to how dare he say something rude. And I'm like, you can't fucking keep people happy. Like, I love that we're seeing this showmanship from Jan. Like we need more of this. And to see the way people are like taking it, I guess it's kind of good that people are being triggered, but like, fucking hell, mate. Jan, Mastercard. And again, this is what I say, because all three of those guys are in that group with him. Did not, Magnus DNF'd. Kristian had cramps. Again, sorry, who's the fourth man whose name Matthias
Magier.
Matthias didn't, we kept hearing that the run was his strength, and he certainly faded. Jan just did what Jan does best. And I think experience won on the day, because if you look at the way that group on the bike was going, Jan didn't attack, didn't take the front, didn't have a dick measuring competition with anybody. When the pace got too hot, dropped off a little bit. And we saw it happen because everybody else who did try to, go with Magnus, or Magnus do his thing, or Kristian, like bridge up or whatever, paid the price for it. And and I just feel like Jan's experience doing it was
the old campaigner, mate, at 42. And, it's great going forward. It's his last year in the sport. We know that. We've known that for a while. It wasn't announced before the US Open, like the PTO tried to.
I saw that. It was weird.
Tried to spin, but it's his last year in the sport, and I had a fairly brief conversation with him yesterday on Instagram after I put a post up, and he's taking it so seriously. Like, I don't say that. I'm not surprised. He's a pro athlete, but the way he's looking at the rest of the season, the way he's going into his final race, which will be Nice. The time he's taking to look after his body and make sure he's there for that. Because I put a post up yesterday, which I've got so many messages on Instagram from people. If Frodeno wins in Nice, Does it really matter what Kristian does for the rest of his career? Can he ever be called the GOAT when he didn't beat a 42-year-old Jan
Yeah.
Frodeno going out on his final year?
I am so happy you brought this up because this is what I was so excited to talk about. This is why all week I've been excited to do the podcast is about this exact thing. Forever. Forever. As long as anybody discusses the greatest of all time, like we will probably be doing in 10 years' time when Kristian has won six,
Yeah,
seven,
yeah.
the note is going to be that when they raced at their best, Jan beat him. And
Or even at their best, he's 42 and it's his final year. It's his retirement year. It's not
not peak. You're
6
right.
years ago.
You're right.
You know, he will always have that. Kristian, we know you listen, mate. We love you.
Yeah, love you, mate. I
But
don't
this
think
is
you
for the
could.
good of the sport, for the joy of the sport, and for people who commentate on the sport, for fans of it. That caveat, if he doesn't beat him in Nice, that caveat will always be there that on Jan's final race, he beat him.
Yeah.
Go
Well,
forward, Kristian, and
I
see what you
think
can do.
I did an episode with Chris. I can't even remember when, and we were talking about something similar. And he was saying that you're always okay with as long as you've like ticked that off. And yeah, look, Kristian beat Jan in Ibiza, but I honestly don't think anybody
That's a wash.
who
No,
watched
neither
that,
of them won.
but not even just that, but I feel like it was very obviously not Jan. Okay, it was a Jan on the return. You saw it. I feel like even Kristian, who is listening, I think it's gonna be bothering him that Jan beat him. Like you saw the emotion. That photo that I
Did you see
retweeted.
the photo at the end
Fucking
where
hell!
he
And
was there
I
was
fucking
and he was
love it.
just like the
I love
face.
it. I
Yeah.
love that. I love that. What I love so much about Kristian, because Kristian is a fucking legend of the sport, is I love
Yeah.
that you see it. I love that he hates it. I love that he's not just been like, oh yeah, where he's like, fuck, god damn it, I'm annoyed that he beat me. Like
Yeah.
I love the passion, but I really do feel like this is a conversation point that is always going to be brought up. And because what I was saying, Chris said, as long as you beat the person, like he's always okay with Crow winning more Konas because he beat Crowe. Daniela, Marinda Caffrey beat Daniela Reeve. Like, the athlete is always okay as long as I beat them. It's like, I can tick it off. Whereas Kristian's technically or possibly never going to get another chance. And I bet he fucking hates it. And I wonder
And
if
it's a
there's
deciding point, isn't it? For the conversations going forward forever. And that's what I love about this moment in our sport, because this one race will echo through the history books of triathlon now, because whichever man wins will have that claim. And, I'm so up for it. And that's why I'm
Kristian's going to do
so
Nice?
fascinated. Well, I think he ought to, don't you?
I honestly, like, legitimately, and I don't know anything here, okay? And I bet he'd deny it. I bet the thoughts in his head. I bet he's thinking. I bet he's thinking, because as I said, he's not going to get another chance, right? He's never going to get another chance. We both
know that on paper at the moment, he's not going to Nice.
Yep.
But if Jan Frodeno goes to Nice and wins, and Kristian's not there to even put up a fight, then that conversation echoes down through time anyway.
Yeah.
So why not go and roll the dice and see what you can do, my friend?
So let's put on, I'm going to put on my, like, not a fan of the sport. Let's talk objectively. I don't think he should do Nice. I don't think he should. From Kristian going to I think Kristian could win the Olympic gold next year again. I hope he does. I feel like Nice would be a detrimental thing for his preparation for Nice. A fan of the sport, I hope he does. Like, so much. But I just I don't know, because I also know enough about Kristian, know that he's the sort of athlete that it's somewhere in his head. I saw him. I still remember seeing Kristian after the race in Kona, and he was angry, like angry. And I love it. Like, I fucking love that so much. He wears his emotion on his sleeve. So, and again, he's such a character, he's such a good guy, but you can tell that this stuff eats him up. And you're right. Like, even without the Nice performance, and because I heard a lot of people saying, "Oh, what's significant about this performance for Jan is that he's got a PTO title." I don't think the PTO title fucking matters. I actually don't think it matters. You could have called it the Timbuktu Milwaukee race. It's that
the Timmy and Jimmy title.
Correct. It's that he beat. It's that he beat Kristian. That's what makes this performance so significant for Jan. And again, I love it. I loved it so much because, again, I have been very vocal about this. Jan is my favorite, and he is the greatest of all time. And I feel like this, just again, Kristian, Gustav. I mean, technically he beat Gustav at the Const Cup. I know it's not the same, but Kristian can win 15 Ironman World Championships. He could win 3 gold medals. He could do it all. And you'd have a really compelling argument for greatest of all time, right? But then you're going to say, yeah, but Jan beat him. Like, this is the point, right? Kristian could race until he's 50, win 25 consecutive Ironman World Championships, and the conversation will always end with, but Jan beat him. And to me, it's so
when he was 42 in his final year.
And he's 42. And it's so...
It was. I found it quite emotional.
Like a mic drop.
If I'm honest, if I'm being brutally honest, it was quite. I think the generation that we are, me and you, we've grown up with watching Jan Frodeno race and other greats, Keenlay and people like that on the men's side, and it was just quite. It was like rolling back the years, wasn't it? It's like the old campaigner can still do it.
It's funny because you do want it to. I think saying it's a bit emotional is correct because like I really have been a bit reflective about it. So we can. Like legitimately, Jan Frodeno is half the reason I enjoy watching and following this sport as much as I do. Like he is
the other half.
Obviously, the white tri-suit does it for me every single time. But like legitimately, he has made following professional triathlon a delight. And to see that happen, I think I put up a tweet like triathlon's better when Jan's winning. When Jan is winning those races, the sport to me is better. And yeah, we've heard a lot about how things have changed and the sport's moved on, and here we are. But there's more to talk about than just the Jan Frodeno act because
Jason West can run, can't he?
100%. And
fuck
again,
me, can he run?
Fuck me, can he? Again, we need to talk about Kristian because Kristian, to me,
he latched on. I loved it when he latched on. I was like,
no other athlete could do that. No other athlete on the fucking field could do that. Like, honestly, you cannot. I cannot fathom how impressive an athlete Kristian is when you see him get off the bike and he's fucked. And I think you were like, well, that's the way my phone lit up. I thought he'd crashed or something because everyone's like, he's fucking done. He's done. I had 6. Oh, Kristian's done. And I'm looking, he's like, oh, he's cramping. And then he fucking catches back up to the group, stops again, not for a small amount of time. To then fucking have Jason West, who ran like 56 minutes, something ridiculous, just over 3-minute pace. And he runs past Kristian, and Kristian's like, I'll have some of that, thanks.
Yeah, joins him. Stays with him until the very, very end, coming onto the blue carpet. We've all had those moments in T2, sorry, where we're struggling to put our shoes on because our legs are cramping, and watching him really struggle to put that left shoe on, it was painful, man. You could feel the pain that was coursing through his body at that point.
It's interesting to see a lot of people saying, oh, he has to work out what this cramping issue is. He has to work. And I'm thinking, well, he did the Edmonton race where he cramped, but he then went and did Kona, didn't cramp. He didn't cramp in Nice. He didn't cramp in sub 7. He's done many other races where he hasn't cramped. So to say that it is this obvious issue, I find it a little bit like...
Yeah, I mean, it could simply be...
not enough time with the TT bike.
Yeah, there's enough time on the TT bike or a deficiency of salt just for that moment.
Pushing too hard because you're trying to keep up with Magnus and you got Jan in your head going, you said you're the fucking best, mate. Put some fucking effort in. Like,
yeah, exactly. I mean, these things can happen and do happen. It's not a obviously if it keeps happening from this point onwards, and he will be thinking about what can I do to avoid cramping from this point forward. But what he won't be doing is what I don't think is the case. It's not like Kristian Blummenfelt cramps. There's the narrative is Kristian Blummenfelt cramped in this race. What's he going to do about it? I don't think it's. I
think me neither.
I think
that's what I mean.
Just been it is what it is type thing.
I don't see it as exactly the same. I don't see it as like, oh shit, this is something he's going to have to work out. I was like, no, he'll sort it out. Like he's Kristian. It's just an aberration. But this is the thing, right? When you look at Kristian, is that he's not the perfect athlete. I mean, in a lot of ways he is, but he doesn't always win. Like he's always up there or thereabouts, but he also has things go wrong. But the thing I like about Kristian is he's not an athlete. He's not an athlete that like we're going to see him suddenly go vegan or, drop his coach or like overhaul everything. He's like, okay, this is an aberration. Let's do it different. Like, let's just work out that little thing I need to do, change it. He doesn't just throw out and completely change everything. Like he doesn't let a hiccup derail, I guess, the long-term progress that he's making. That's why I think over time, he's just going to continue to get better and better and better. But when I saw him go with Jason West, I couldn't fucking believe it, mate. Like literally.
Jason West can put out a really good swim and a reasonable bike. Conversation over, isn't it?
Yeah. Fuck, man. Nothing to talk about.
Jesus.
I heard somebody say that.
What was he running, like 250 something?
Fucking ridiculous. I heard somebody say it's the most impressive run in triathlon history, and I don't agree with that. Like, I think it's fucking phenomenal, but I still think there's better. But Christ almighty, can he run, mate? And he reckons he was actually disappointed with his run. He thought he'd run like a minute and a half faster or something. He is, we've said it a long time. He is going to be, again, I think that give him another, couple of these races. And if reports of what's happening next year are true, he's going to be very hard to beat at that PTO distance, mate. If he can just work on his bike a little bit, but maintain that run or ride with a group. I mean, I think he did probably, I don't know, the 20 meter, but yeah, it was fucking impressive, right? Like really impressive running.
20 meter it might negate some drafting, but it does give you, if you're with a group, it gives you something to pace off.
Yeah.
If you're not a natural, or by someone with a huge amount of bike experience, you're not a natural biker, having someone in front of you just to see and pace off, that can pay dividends.
What else? What are some other standouts or things you want to discuss?
Sam Long did all right, didn't he?
Happy for Sam Long. Happy for Sam Long.
Yeah, I was as well. New dad out there, fifth place. I think Matthias Margier from France. He was an unexpected standout in that top group.
But Dave McNamee's run.
Daniel Beckergaard again. Come on, Daniel.
He's getting there, mate. I love him.
He's getting there. He's warming up into it. But
yeah, Daniel Beckergaard's a superstar.
I think he's brilliant.
Yeah, he's
a great bloke.
Yeah, really, really have a lot of love for Daniel.
I just want to see him winning stuff.
Yeah, same. Because I still feel like he came on, like he has such raw potential, and I don't know I feel like he is capable of being the best at any of those athletes. He's right up there. He just has to work it out. But Dave McNamee's last week's guest, second fastest run split of the day, finished what, 7th or something? 7th?
Yeah.
Phenomenal.
David McNamee finished 7th. I'm yawning. I'm sorry.
It's okay. All the energy, mate.
David McNamee.
Second fastest run split.
7th. Yeah.
Behind only Jason West. So impressive,
good
mate.
bloke.
Yeah. Really good bloke.
What happened to Lionel Sanders, though?
So I think that there was a, I mean, he was like 4 minutes down from the swim or something, like something terrible.
Yeah.
Like really, I was shocked at how big the gap, I don't know which one we're going to get. But at one point, I think he'd run himself in a set. Like he definitely had a crack. And this is where, again, I think the broadcast sort of let us down because Joe Skipper was telling me this. I didn't even realize that Lionel had run himself up to 7 and then sort of fell back to 11th. Wish we saw that happen, but we didn't. And again, I was actually surprised because I knew the swim gap was so big. And then when I saw him cross the finish line, I was like, fucking what a warrior. He's such a warrior.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, like you say, that picture of that sort of Sunday afternoon run group that were out, McNamee, Sanders, who else was in there? I wish we'd seen that group come together and then disperse as it did across the race, because like you say, shoulder to shoulder racing is something that is lacking in long course. I loved this race. I loved this race more than any triathlon race I've loved for a long time.
Same.
I got a lot from it. I've watched it twice and I keep reflecting on it and the ramifications it's got for the narrative going forward. And even to the point where, like, back when we started the podcast, the Norwegians were the new thing. No one's going to beat them anymore. And some of the old guard kept saying, hold up. And Jan Frodeno specifically kept saying, hold up. It's not quite over yet.
Yeah.
And this was the proof of that. And there's a lot more excitement to come for the rest of the season. So triathlon is certainly got me engaged right now.
One last thing, just to bring it up, and I think the last thing to talk about is the Magnus.
You are on mute.
What?
There you go. You're back.
Oh, that was weird. One last thing that I do just want to touch on was Magnus, because I think there's a lot of interest to see how he went so close after that Roth performance. And I think it came out post-race that he had a stomach issue or something. But I mean, athletes say what they say. Do you think that was residual fatigue from Roth? Do you think he might change because we now have...
I mean, even if it is a stomach issue, the stomach issue could be residual from Roth as well. He pushed really hard in that race.
Do you think we'll see him change his approach?
To your immune system.
Do you think that we might see him maybe skip Singapore? Do you think we'll see him at Singapore? Do you think I don't know? What do you, if you're his coach, what are you saying? Keep things as is, or back things off a bit, or like what do you think?
If I was his coach, I would probably skip Singapore and focus entirely on Nice, just to make sure everything's okay. I'd go away and do a solid training block. I'd be getting your body back together. Certainly, if you're having some gastric issues, which is something that we've seen happen to him in the past, I'd be thinking about getting your body recouped, making sure you're fully healthy, and going into Nice as a raging legend.
But one thing that's funny, right? And I couldn't help but see the contrast, because there's a lot of talk about the way that he runs, and he doesn't look fast. He looks quite goofy when he runs, but he moves so quickly. and it's always a tall guy. It's his long leopard shots. Seen him and Jan Frodeno next to each other, both tall guys. Fucking hell, one looks fantastic. One doesn't look so good compared to the other. So
Yeah, Jan is really tall. Did you see that picture I posted on Instagram? Like,
I haven't
I'm not
actually.
I'm not short, but he makes me look like I'm
A midget.
seriously small. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, that's it, mate. PTO,
So off
excellent.
the back of this, we had the impact on the rankings. On the women's side, Taylor Knibb is now in second place. She busted all the way up from sixth, I think. And on the men's side, Jan Frodeno has gone up to fourth place, having been out of the top 10 for some time.
I did see the way they shifted. I do. It's their ranking system, right? And I appreciate it. But you look at the top ones and they're all just PTO events. And I feel like, come on, I don't know. I don't know. It is exciting to see that Jan's creeping back up there, and the way that things are shifting.
But if you started a series, you would be trying to grow your series by emphasizing your own races.
Yeah, I get that's what I mean.
You know,
I get it.
You've got to. They've got to. Especially when there's a financial gain for the athletes to be in the rankings, which is then going to promote the athletes to do the PTO races. I'm into that. I buy into that because, I mean, are we going to talk about the future of the PTO series right now and what we might think might be happening?
We can if you like. We fucking go where we want, mate. It's our podcast.
I think it's probably a good idea, isn't it? Being that we've just talked about the US Open, I think it'd be good to go down that rabbit hole a little bit. So, Mr. Ford, what have you heard?
I've heard some rumors about what might be happening next year with the PTO. I mean, it's not like it's a secret. I think on the broadcast they were talking about it might be 7. I've heard up to 10 race series next year, which is really interesting. I feel like if they're going to go 10 race series, we might actually see them contract out athletes, which I hope they do. Yeah, I don't. I mean, I had that conversation with Dave last week where we were sort of talking like, do they actually have the capacity to put on more events if that's the sort of expense? I guess they do. I mean, we never really know they're quite mysterious about their funding, but I mean, what do you think about the thoughts of like a longer term, actual committed year-long series of PTO events? Do you think it's going to force athletes? Do you think we're going to see if these athletes are contracted to PTO events, not doing anything else? Like, how do you see that stuff sort of working?
I would love to see a 10 race PTO series, and I would love to see the athletes contracted into it. I want to see I want to see it become the Formula One. I want to see the same names racing each other across a season, race in, race out, and so you start to get that ebb and flow of form and that kind of the season long narrative. To quote cycling a little bit, and so I'm really up for it. You need the buy-in from the athletes. You need the financial incentive to be there. And I think if you did create a series of 10 races where you've got the same names racing in and out, you start to negate the importance of the Ironman races. I read an interview with Chris McCormack this morning on Try 24/7, where he was saying he speaks to athletes who'll say to him, I've won 7 Ironmans, but he's never heard of them. And you want to take that back, take that away a little bit from the sport, where you can say, oh yeah, last year I won 3 of the PTO Open events, and that means something because it means something financially, it means something in the rankings, and it means something to your sponsors because of the broadcast. It means something to your fans because of the audience base that's there watching it. I think they can really build something out of this. It just needs to have the legs to do it and not just appear then falter. We really need to invest in this and make it good. And if I'm honest, all signs look like they are investing in it. The broadcast is improving. The promotion around the races are improving. The races themselves are improving. The locations are improving. I'm here for it, and I'm enthused by it.
I just again don't want to beat a dead horse, but I really hope the athletes buy in because I feel like
that's the only thing.
We really need athletes to start to take a longer term view rather than there's such a short term view in triathlon where it's like now. What's for me? And I really feel like there needs to be some sort of element of. I mean, we talked about a lot of this on the bonus podcast, but yeah, I feel like if the conditions are laid out to make this viable, there needs to be supported by the best. So yeah, we'll see. But fingers crossed, man. Like again, I think when I heard the news, and again, I'm not sure what we can and can't say because I don't know. You don't want to. But if it is true and the things that we're hearing are true, it sounds like it's going to be really exciting. And
can I give you a little juicy?
Yeah, go on.
There is a rumor that I've heard through people that I know that there might well be a Devon PTO Open.
I heard that was definitely on the cards too, to be honest. I was expecting
Oh,
Devon
there you
to
go.
be I mean, I would be surprised if it wasn't, to be honest. But I mean,
There you
sorry,
go.
I should add, I heard that it's going to be aligned with World Triathlon and be like the official World Triathlon long distance series, which I think is also an interesting development considering.
Just don't give them the fucking broadcast.
Yes,
Keep
I
the
was about to
broadcast
say,
yourself.
and
Don't give those fuckers a broadcast.
none of the fucking bullshit with the kits and the.
Yeah, yeah. Don't start reducing
It's so
sponsors'
funny.
logos.
Here's something I do want to add, just because I saw that there was that Try 24/7 put out an article this week about the interview that I did with Dave McNamee, where Dave and myself were talking a little bit about our interactions with British Triathlon, and I was messaging somebody, Graham, I think at Try 24/7, and I said, I find their response quite funny. I've got the emails to prove it if you want to see how difficult they were to deal with, but yeah, as long as that bureaucracy bullshit doesn't come as part of it, I think it'd be great.
Yeah, yeah. They've got to see the wood for the trees a little bit here.
Yeah.
They've got to see the benefits of not fucking over what the PTO are trying to do, you know, by sort of trying to cannibalize it.
It's just that I feel like there's so much bureaucracy in a sport that isn't that big. It's like when we're trying to act like we're like a big, serious, proper sport, and it just seems to actually harm the sport. Actually had a really fascinating conversation with a person this week that I have a lot of respect for, and I think that they are incredibly switched on with the direction that the sport should go, and very open to think different ways of thinking. And
You're talking about me again.
you, of course, always, but I was sort of suggesting that, I sometimes feel like, triathlon needs to get out of its own way a little bit and stop trying to be this fucking super thing and like take the fucking paywall down. Why people have to pay, why people have to pay to watch a world triathlon race is baffling to me when the broadcast is so fucking terrible. Shit like that. They need to actually focus on growing the sport first before trying to commercialize it. And I mean, from a broadcast point of view. So anyway, that's a whole other thing. There's more to talk about this. We're nearly at an hour already, and we've talked of one of the things that we thought we were going to cover this week. Where do you want to go?
I want to mention the fact that Sebastian Kienle came second in Norseman, just because I love the man.
Yep.
What
Gotta
a
get
guy,
him on, mate. We got to get him on the podcast.
We got to. We need to do that. So Norseman Extreme Triathlon happened on Saturday, August the 5th, and it was John Brerevold from Norway in 9:09:57 took the men's, with Sebastian Kienle in second, and Flora Codledge from Great Britain took the women's in 11:20:10, with Emil Clev Bergam from Norway in 11:31:40.
What's that last name?
I do my best.
What was it? Actually,
Bergheim.
Let me see. I need to look this up.
I believe it's Bergheim.
I want to find it out because let's have a look at this. Norseman try. Talk while I'm doing it because, fantastic to see.
Kienle had quite the race, and he's on his sort of like farewell tour. And he said afterwards, to all of those who supported me from the beginning, who had my back when I struggled, to those who celebrated with me and cried with me, who followed me and cheered me on, thank you. I don't know if this is my last long chorus race in my career. I feel like I'm not able to squeeze this last 1% out of my body anymore. That's often necessary to win the races. But I definitely enjoyed this ultimate challenge here at Norseman, which, and it certainly is the ultimate challenge and a good race for him to sign off on. Do you think it'll be his last?
Yep. Yeah. I think he's, although maybe seeing what Jan did, he's like, fuck, okay, maybe I can still do this. Do you think Jan's retiring? Like, do you actually think, because I've heard a lot of people say, like, after this,
I did like Kienle's comment after Roth when he said he finished the race and he automatically found his brain going to, what can I do to get better? What can I do to beat these guys next year? And then he reminded himself he doesn't have to and went, it's all right. I can stop. Do I think Jan's retiring? Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do now. I must say, there was a period in the start of the year where I thought he was going to do one more Kona. But
yeah, I did too. I hoped he would, yeah.
I think he might actually be retiring.
Mate, what a way to go, hey. Like I said, mic drop. I think he's going to win Nice.
I think he's going to win Nice as well.
I think he's going to win
Nice. Back to Frodeno. This isn't the Frodeno fanboy podcast.
It is actually. Sorry, that is. People won't realize how close we were to renaming the podcast the Frodeno fanboys. Namely for me. Let's
Timmy and Jimmy, the Frodeno fanboys.
Nah, we won't talk about it because the other athlete that we should talk about this week is Alistair Brownlee. It came out that Ali has had ankle surgery, which means that he will be out of action for at least a few weeks. But again, we sort of discussed, we were sort of like not sure what was going on. We said, is this the end for him? Certainly sounds like he's still red hot and ready to go. So I love that. I hope, I fucking said this 1,000 times. I hope that once this thing is fixed, this is obviously what's been the issue and is going to mean that we get to see him actually have a proper red hot crack at it. I hope. But again, I'm starting to wonder, am I like one of those abuse victims who just like...
Yeah. I mean, look, the articles and all the posts said the surgery went well and that he'll be expecting a return to training and racing soon. Good luck with that. I hope that's the case. I'm kind of done with just telling myself that we're going to have, because it's been so long. It's been so long. So if it happens,
but
it
imagine,
happens.
James, imagine if he does come back to Kona next year and he beats everybody. Just imagine. It'd be phenomenal.
No, I'm done with imagining.
It'd be phenomenal.
We'll see. Good luck with your recovery. I hope you get back to racing, and I hope we do get to see a really good crack at some of the biggest races from you. We also had the Ironman 70.3 European Championships this weekend.
Certainly did.
Laura Philipp took the women's race, and Peter Heimerick took the men's race.
My boy Mike Phillips in second. Well done, Mike. Yeah.
Yeah, Mike Phillips in second, and Alessandro Fabian in third. Imogen Simmons in second on the women's, and Emma Pallant-Brown in third on the women's race. Good to see Lisa Norden up there as well in fourth place.
Did you see Emma was in medical after the race? Emma Pallant-Brown.
No, I didn't. I really didn't see much about this race. If I'm brutally honest,
the tracker didn't even work,
my
mate.
focus was elsewhere, and I didn't even know this race had happened until this morning when I started preparing for the podcast.
Oh, yeah. No, because again, I had a Mike and Amelia in the race, which I was tracking. But I saw one thing I did see. I saw a video, and it was a pack of like 20 athletes, questionable distance. I was like, that's not great. But the tracker was fucked. It was actually almost impossible. I think I even messaged the Ironman Europe page, being like, what's going on with your tracker? I want to follow this race. Peter Heimerick was on one. I spoke to Mike after the race. He tried some things to try to get away with it on the bike and couldn't. But yeah, second place for Mike, I think, is incredible. Again, world-class athlete. I think we see a lot of these athletes from down under tend to, they do well in the race down here, but they don't perform necessarily in the global races. Mike Phillips is, same as a Braden Curry, truly world-class athlete. And to see him second in, European Championships was great. Mike's race in Singapore. So as Amelia came fifth in the women's race. Again, I think she's just been off the back of a really big block. She's definitely focused on that Singapore event in 2 weeks. So I'm really excited to see how Mike and Amelia go. Amelia is the queen of Asia. Like, she does so well in Asia. And I think we're going to see some surprising things from Amelia in that Singapore race. But yeah, love to see Mike there. So Mike's got that Singapore, then he goes to Nice. So it's going to be exciting.
And Laura Phillips pretty good as well, isn't she?
Well, mate, again, I have to be honest, and I know I shouldn't, but I am a little bit annoyed that she didn't go to Milwaukee.
So am I. I was going to follow up my comment with that.
Yeah, I'm a little annoyed.
She's such a good athlete. She's such a solid performer. It's her results are amazing, and I'd love to see her race. I mean, she's raced a really strong 70.3 here.
Yeah.
That she'd suit the PTO distance so well. She's won Ironman South Africa this year, Ironman 70.3 Krakow, Challenge Roth, she came third, and then she's won this race. So I'd love to see her racing those PTO Opens as well. But she's probably one of my favorite athletes out there at the moment.
I really feel like Laura Philipp is, again, truly capable of being the best in the world. And for just a series of unfortunate things, we saw the COVID stuff last year, and like we just keep seeing these things just sort of go wrong. So then to see her just miss a race or choose another race, I was a bit like, come on, please, can we just actually get to see you? I really, really want to see Laura Philipp. I'm hoping she has a huge Kona. I think like she could be a Kona winner this year. She's definitely one of those athletes that you have to consider one of the red hot favorites for that race. I think we're doing pretty well for time, Jimbo. Is there anything else?
I think we've done it, haven't we? Haven't we done it?
I just want to say again, Jan Frodeno is the greatest to ever do the sport, and I'll fight anybody who disagrees with me. Like I will. This is a hill. I said this to Chris this week. This is a hill I'm willing to die on. I will stand on top of this hill, and I will argue for this. And I fucking loved the PTO race so much. It was such a good weekend of triathlon for me. Like I just thoroughly enjoyed it. And yeah, I think we've sort of been saying how we feel like the sport isn't maybe in the best spot, and I still think that a lot of it is true. But fuck, it's a lot easier to be optimistic about it after you see that sort of weekend of racing and to see the conversation around it. Yeah, I love it. I mean, I wish some people would stop fucking complaining and just.
Yeah, and it's nice. It's nice as a fan to be in a place where you feel like the sport that you follow as a fan has properly serviced you
It's
this
true.
weekend.
It's
You know
true,
what I
isn't it?
mean?
Yeah,
I'm
yeah, it's
like,
nice.
this is what it feels like to really enjoy a weekend's racing and get something from it and get and feel like, that was brilliant. I really enjoyed that, as opposed to going, oh, what could have been? What should have happened? The broadcast was shit. Their athletes pulled out. This person didn't race. That person's not racing. It was really
And
good.
I cannot emphasize this enough. And people might say that it's hyperbole or that I'm being overly dramatic, whatever. But this race, like we saw history written on the weekend, right? In the sense that this race is going to be spoken about at least for the rest of my lifetime as an avid fan of this sport, right? Like the significance of this performance, I think people get an idea of, but I don't think we're going to get an idea of this until in 10 years when we're looking at the back end of Kristian's career and we're looking at all that he's achieved and what all Gustav has achieved. And we are having those conversations about the greatest to do the sport. This race is going to be such a pivotal part of that conversation. And again, I feel like me and you and probably like we appreciated from that point of view. And I think a lot of people will come to appreciate that performance from that point of view as well. It was a significant result for Jan Frodeno on the weekend, and I loved it. Fucking loved it.
Agreed.
Jimbo, if people want to find out other things about Talking Triathlon, they want to support us, they want to get our bonus stuff, where do they need to go?
Well, what you need to do is go to
Patreon.com.
patreon.com/talkingtriathlon.com.
Sound enthusiastic about it, mate. Come on, it's patreon.com/talkingtriathlon.
I haven't got it in front of me. We're also on Twitter as talktriathlon.com because Talking Triathlon was taken. We're on Facebook as Talking Triathlon. Come and find us on there. Have a chat with us on Instagram. Tim is at tford14 on Instagram, and I'm bale.james85 on Instagram. Have a chat with us. Argue with us, tell us we're wrong. We love it. But most of all, sign up for a patron so you can hear our true inner thoughts on the bonus episode.
We did get pretty.
Tim just goes on and on about runts.
Yeah, we did. We did get pretty spicy on that thing, and like I said, we appreciate that. Everybody's jumped on Patreon. We really, really appreciate it. Literally, the money's going straight to a video editor. He did a great job of that reel that went up today, which was Dave talking about doping, and I love that he. So again, full disclosure, his name's Ace. He doesn't really follow the sport of triathlon, but I appreciate that when he was messaging me saying he's doing the reels, he goes, don't worry, I've got lots of footage of Colin Chartier. I was like, yes, I've converted him. He knows enough about triathlon now to know that when you're talking about doping, you have to include Colin Chartier. And that was a very proud parenting moment for me. So check that out on our Instagram. It's also on YouTube. Our YouTube, the subscribers are growing every week. We really appreciate it. So if you listen to this and you want to see our ugly faces, youtube.com, I think Talking Triathlon as well. But Jimbo, we're going to be back with an interview. I don't know who it is yet. We haven't organized it for next week, but we will organize an interview for next week. But until then, talk to you later.
Been a pleasure. Cheerio.